Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Child Life in Action. I'm Megan Roloff, ACLPs Director of Member Engagement and Partnerships, and I am thrilled to be joined today by the amazingly impressive Jessika Boles. We are going to be discussing research, some of the work she's done, and some of the opportunities that are available for those engaging in research within ACLP. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to Jessika to introduce herself, and we'll get going with our conversation. Jessika?
Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. I've been a child life specialist for about 13 years now. I currently work as the pediatric intensive care child life specialist at Vanderbilt Children's in Nashville, Tennessee. And I also hold a position as an adjunct professor in the psychology and human development program at Vanderbilt. And I am also an active researcher in the middle of those two worlds, kind of bringing all those things together.
So just to kind of start off, where did your interest in research come from?
That's a good question. And one that I think I've never answered the same way twice. I want to say that it started at a very young age. There is a classic home video of me at the park with my parents, and I'm probably 2.5 playing. And I keep asking my dad why questions. Everything he says, I said, why? And you hear him in the background finally say, no more why, just play. I've always been very curious in the whys of things. And that's currently a period I'm living with my own 2-year-old daughter. So it's kind of fun.
Oh, come full circle.
Evolve, yeah. But I've always just been curious about the workings of the world and how different events can be perceived differently by different people based on who they are or the position that they're in. And this idea that maybe there's not just one singular truth that we can boil down to. We do the right research methods, but rather the idea that maybe there's lots of truths and they're fleeting and they're dynamic and they're positional. So I've really been interested in why. And I think part of that also came from when I was in my undergraduate degree. I majored in religious studies because that was the program that allowed me to see the most about how people view the world and kind of how different belief systems shape the decisions that people make and how they live. And so I won a research grant to go for the summer up to Wyoming to study Devil's Tower, which is a mountain that's famous for conflict between the Lakota Sioux people and the mountain climbing community. It's a very unique mountain for mountain climbing. It has a geometric structure that really isn't found anywhere else in the world. And so it appeals very highly to mountain climbers. But then at the same time, it's also believed to be the origin space for the Lakota Sioux, the point at which the world was created, the world began, and when the world is created anew. So I got to go up there and I took my brother, who was probably like 15 at the time, as my research assistant. And we spent a few weeks up there and we learned about the situation and we talked to people on both sides. And I really loved that experience, being out in the field and getting to know people and hearing their stories. And so then I think moving into grad school and then into my career as a child life specialist, that's kind of been a continuing pattern. I like to give people opportunities to tell the stories that are meaningful for them so that those of us who are caring for them can hear not just the what, but the why, and really be able to care for them in a way that makes sense for their experience.
That's fantastic. And I love that, this is something that's really been following you. It's not just, you woke up one day and like, I'm going to do research, but this has been a kind of consistent theme for your life. I love that inquisitiveness. So you've participated in a number of child life related research projects. Are there any that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, I think I'm proud of all of them, because if you've ever done a research project, you know that it ends up being sort of quite the investment in time and energy and, of course, collaboration. Any project starts from, a seedling of an idea that gets developed as you talk with people or as you consult the research literature or as you observe the work that you're doing with patients and families. And this little seed of an idea becomes this sprout of a project that then you kind of nurture over time until finally you get to the end. And you write that paper or give that presentation. But even then, that becomes a jumping off point for you never know when someone in the audience is going to ask you a question that makes you think differently about the work and then springs off another idea. Maybe I should look at it this way next time. I think the work that I'm most proud of in my career, if I had to choose, is the research that kind of pushes the envelope about what we believe about children and what they can do in their health experiences. Although it's not published yet, my dissertation looked at 3 young children with cancer, and I followed them for about a year to a year and a half from the time they walked into our cancer hospital until they sort of reached the midway point of their care. And I, very similarly to Myra Bluebon-Langner's The Private Worlds of Dying Children, I spent a lot of time observing them in their clinics, doing different child life sort of interventions with them, like medical play, open-ended art activities, group activities, and then, interviews and some of the more traditional types of research methods. And what I really loved about that study is it was so telling about just how acutely aware even young children are of power dynamics and how that shapes communication in the healthcare setting.
Sure.
I'll never forget one 8-year-old little boy told me that when his doctor comes in the room, he doesn't actually play on his iPad. He pretends to play on his iPad because that way he can listen without people knowing that he's listening.
Oh, wow.
And then there was another little girl who was 9, and she would tell me that she knew when her doctor was coming to tell her bad things because he always had a look on his face like he didn't know what to say or how to say it. So the fact that young children are acutely aware of, those dynamics, I think tells us they're a lot more smart about and a lot more aware of what's happening than our society lets us believe.
Absolutely.
So I really have liked the research that I've done where I've been able to give kids a voice about their experiences and in a way that kind of challenges popular beliefs about children's capacities or children's desire to be involved in their care. And then I'm also really proud of the value proposition statement, which just came earlier this year. That was a labor of love for sure. That project we worked on very solidly for over a year. I had a great team of 5 certified child life specialists and 5 graduate students. And we worked probably anywhere from 10 to 40, 50 plus hours a week a piece. And I think it really culminated in a great articulation of all of the value that child life specialists bring, not just to individual patients and families in the immediate moment, but in their long-term trajectory of health and care. And then also the value we bring to hospital administrators and programs and the ways in which we reduce costs, we reduce waste, we increase satisfaction and efficiency. All those pieces have been sort of out there floating in the literature for a while, but this was the first time that we were really able to bring them together and package them in a way that I feel like has turned out pretty powerfully.
Absolutely. And on behalf of everyone at ACLP, we could not thank you and your research team enough for having put that together. For anyone watching this that isn't familiar with the value proposition statement, I highly recommend taking a look at it. I will make sure there's a link off of this video, and you can see for yourself the amazing work that Jessika and her team did, because it's like you said, it's really kind of the only thing that we have that's synthesizing all of this that we knew individually all this was out there, but let's put it in one package. So thank you. And
it was an honor. And it was a great opportunity for me to really show the why. So getting to, my curiosity, but to do that in a way that hopefully benefits our larger field.
Absolutely. So after going through all of that research and putting it all together, did it create new questions for you that you want to pursue?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's really interesting is the way the proportions of the literature have changed over the past couple decades. So as I was doing this project, I was also working with Joan Turner up at Mount St. Vincent University. And we were doing a couple different scoping reviews of child life literature and kind of how that has looked over the past 20 years, one of which has already come out in the Journal of Child Life. And that one was about child life focused content. So we looked at child life focus and categorized and analyzed every article that's been published in there since its inception. And we looked at, what is the topic of the article? What type of methods have they used? Who are the authors? What kinds of educational background do they have? What types of patient population does this article look at? And one of the things we found is that there's a much higher proportion of articles that have to do with clinical interventions like preparation or procedural support. And there are articles related to kind of our foundational component of play. And Joan and I did a follow-up of that, and we looked at all of the published articles that mention child life specialists across scholarly journals from, I think it's 1997 to 2018. And we saw a similar pattern that sort of towards the middle of that 20-year period, the articles about play drastically drop. But then the articles about preparation and procedural support have continued to go up over time. So that was very enlightening doing that project at the same time as the value proposition statement, because we have historically built so much of our field on play and what play does for children. But maybe it's because of the limitations of the journals we're submitting to or the health as a whole. But that play has kind of been silenced a little bit in favor of that preparation and procedural support, which does, from a methodological standpoint, it is a lot easier to study preparation and procedural support.
Sure.
More finite interventions. You can look at them quantitatively, qualitatively, and you can come to some really good conclusions based on those interventions and their effects. Versus play, we know the value of play is really when it's child-centered. And that's a flexible thing to try and study, because children we never know are going to play.
Yeah.
They're going to play. We may have one intent and we may have, certain equipment put out, but we may be doing a surgery prep for a child who's about to go back and have surgery, and we're kind of, doing open-ended play, but then all of a sudden they're making the puppet have a baby. Like, it may be completely unrelated, but in their world, it makes sense. So it's really hard methodologically to study play, but I think that's also so much of the value of our field, that the value proposition statement and these projects with Joan have sort of reminded me that we need to think about how to weave that line back in, because it's really at the root of what we do.
Absolutely. So I knew you were working on the value proposition last year. I didn't realize you also had these projects with Joan going at the same time. And so how do you balance all of this? Because you're also in a clinical role.
Good question. I don't really know how I balance it. I have like a great answer. Here's my formula, and everybody else can do it too. I think that I try to work efficiently. I may not have lots and lots of time to work on something, but I try to make sure that the time that I do sit down, I'm very focused on that particular task. I think it also helps that a lot of the projects that I'm working on are interrelated in some way. So I'm not, starting with each project at square one and kind of going from beginning to end, but I'm building on something else that I've already done, or I'm jumping off of something that I'm in the process of doing. But I think one of the things that really has been unique probably for me in my role being a clinician and working as an adjunct professor is I've had access to some really amazing graduate students. And I absolutely could not do the work that I do without graduate student support. Whether they're helping me pull literature and put together a literature review, or they're helping me analyze, these 100 interviews that have come in, or they're actually going out into the field and helping me, interview families that have had certain experiences. I think that that's kind of where my love for research came from, was being able as an undergraduate and graduate student to have those experiences and to really come into my own. So I love that I'm able to pass that on to our up and coming graduate students. And they are also really the ones that keep me organized and keep me moving and keep me afloat. They're only with me for, a year or two, but then when they leave, I'm like, all right, who's next? Come on, let's pick up these pieces. Who's going to keep me organized? Who's going to let me know when this is due or that is due?
Yeah.
Really, they do. They keep me on track because I'm balancing so many things that I'm willing to accept any help I can get. And I'm lucky that I'm in a place where the help that I get is really top notch.
That's fantastic. So we're going to switch gears here for a minute and talk about yet another role that you're taking on. There's ACLP is starting the new Research Fellows program, and you are our first Chief Fellow. So first off, congratulations and thank you. But can you tell us just a little bit about what this program is and what you'll be doing as ACLP's first Chief Research Fellow?
Yeah. So I think some of these things have been happening sort of informally throughout our field over the past couple decades. I can think of when I first came into the field, there was a research and scholarship task force. Mm. So I joined that task force and I was really excited about it. We, had a few projects here and there, and we helped mentor different people in the field that were working towards doing a research project. And then that culminated in the Research and Scholarship Committee. And then that committee became part of the Scientific Advancement of Professional Practice mega committee. So there's been this evolution of interest in research, and it's really been led by the people in our field that have that knowledge, but also that passion for research. So those things have, kind of happened in little increments here and there, and little differences have added up to big differences. But I'm really honored that we're at a point where we're recognizing the value of research to the point of creating this specific fellows program. Our intent as the fellows is to be able to, provide input and mentorship for people who are interested in doing research. We're happy to support the efforts of ACLP in collaborating with other organizations or considering different research involvement opportunities. We hope to someday be able to work with researchers to kind of get them the resources they need to be able to do their projects. But really, we want to be a space of people who can provide information and provide support. If it's mentorship, great. If it's working towards partnering with another institution to collaborate across those lines, great. We just really want to be a formalized resource for folks that we are accessible, available, and happy to help in the ways that we can.
And I think that's really exciting because I hear from members fairly frequently that they have an interest in doing research, they want to, but for whatever reason, just don't know where to start, or maybe, in the course of their education, didn't have, some of these research assistant opportunities to get those skills and know who to talk to about getting things IRB approved or whatever else they need to do. So I love the idea that we're going to have this group of people that are, within our child life field, the experts at this, that can, not necessarily have to do it all themselves, but help others learn how to do it themselves, and hopefully over time grow the.
And I know. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
I know I get emails, here and there from people who are like, "How did you get started in research?" Or I'm working towards my doctoral degree. Like, what are the things that you think that would be really important for ACLP in terms of research right now? And so I think these things are happening, and I think that's valuable. And I love being able to give that input. But I think what's missing is, again, the spectrum of research is so wide, so far reaching. There's so many different ways that you can take the same question and study it in different ways with different resources or different participants, different methods, even different ways of how you represent your data at the end, whether it's a formal article or a presentation or something arts related. So I think this will be a great opportunity for us to have a group of people that shares that knowledge and expertise, but also has more diversity of opinions and perspectives, so that when that person comes and says, "Hey, I want to study XYZ for my doctoral project, what do you think?" we can give you more than just one way of thinking about it or looking at it. And I think that's really what's going to continue to grow the research base in our field, is kind of breaking down that idea that research is just one thing. Instead, helping people see that there's lots of different ways to do it. And there's not one way that's right or wrong, but they're just different ways of generating those leading truths that can help inform practice or help inform administration or whatever it may be. So I'm excited to bring together a group of people that has that diversity of opinions and perspectives.
Absolutely. So for anyone that's watching this that is interested in being part of the Fellows Program, what kind of skills or experiences are you looking for, and what do they need to do to, kind of be considered?
Yeah. I think diversity of perspectives, again, is so important. And I think, the grand scope of research, just like in clinical practice, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. There's some people who really excel in the writing portion, or there's some people who really love analysis, and maybe they love quantitative analysis versus qualitative analysis. Or maybe there's folks that really love thinking through study design. So I think what we're looking for is people who have experience doing research. And again, that can look lots of different ways.
Sure.
People who have significant training in research. So people who have their PhD or are almost completed with their PhD, that have that experience. Or if you don't have that level of education, having a track record of doing research in your clinical role or whatever that may be. We're looking for people that are, good communicators, good educators, good mentors, people that can take what's in their head and translate it in a way that other people can understand, whether they're starting at square one or starting at, a pretty high level of understanding. So I think we want people who are knowledgeable and experienced in research, recognizing that not everyone's going to have the same strengths and the same weaknesses, but people who are also all committed to that education and mentorship that I think our organization's really looking for.
Fantastic. Now, what about for people that, want to just get started? There are a lot of child life specialists out there that are, in clinical roles, want to do some research, whether it's to, something maybe smaller scale, like quality improvement just within their own program, or something that maybe would be publishable on a larger level. What do you have any advice for them to just get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that can be challenging is that the way we would ask a clinical question isn't necessarily the way we would ask a research question. So I think as you're thinking about what is this, clinical gap that I'm noticing, or what is this, difficulty that I want to address, before you jump right to this is the question I want to answer, take some time to look through the literature that's already out there. Do a bit of a systematic search and find, what have other people said about this topic, and how does that change or fuel your question in a different way. And then as you are reading that research, talk about it with people. Talk about it with people in your department or people who are on your multidisciplinary care team. If you're a student, talk about it with a professor, because those conversations really help you refine the question that you're wanting to ask. And then as you get to a place where you're like, this is the question I want to ask, then think about who are the resources and what are the resources that are available to you. A lot of times there are free resources available through your healthcare institution that you probably don't even realize exist, whether it's through the nursing research department or a research core or some other sort of research group. Sometimes there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help, whether it's with mentorship or money or support staff. It's just about connecting those dots. So as you're developing your question, think about what resources are out there, not just in your institution, but then also think about what's available through ACLP. So look to, the Research Fellows Program. Look to some of the published research that child life specialists have done. Look at the Journal of Child Life, Psychosocial Theory and Practice, and see what's been done in there. Take the time to read through the forums, see what questions people are asking about research or what they're doing. And, just reach out to us, just reach out to someone. I always welcome an email from somebody that, has a research question or wants research insight. And I know there's lots of others of us out there that are the same way. So I think ask as much as you can, not just about your question, but also ask about what resources are out there and then ask for people's support. And I think that's kind of how you piece it together.
All right. Well, thank you, Jessika, so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone watching this will have learned something. And it's just really inspiring talking to you. And I love that maybe we can all work together, more effectively now to seek those truths. So thank you. And to everyone else, we'll see you for the next Child Life in Action.